And tonight, starting it off with a bang, Bill. We've got
Yeah.
Wemby versus Joker in San Antonio tonight. And you and I wanted to do a little bit of Victor Wembanyama conversation because I think there was some question about him coming into there were very high expectations for him, but nobody really knew what he would be able to do until he actually got into the league because his frame, it's slender, right? He can do a lot of different things, but there were questions about, the rookie wall. Would he be able to sustain it over an entire season? What would it look like on a bad team? Would he be able to buoy them? From an individual perspective, for me at least, he has exceeded all expectations and then some, right?
Yeah, and I like hype. I'm into like whoever, right? Yes, and the expectations were massive. And I'll also throw this in too. I think the fact that it came from abroad is still a thing that certainly the casual fan, I'm not sure that they don't see him in college. We should be over it with Luka and Giannis and all these other guys. But I think there was doubt strong.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us just thought like, okay, maybe he'll be great in 2 or 3 years, sure, but not.
People were hitting him with people were hitting him with baguette bowl. I mean,
right.
Like that's what people thought, right? Some people, not all people. A lot of people thought he was going to be excellent and be a transcendent star. I don't think anybody thought it would be this soon. Yeah.
The thing about him that's the biggest compliment for me is I can't not watch him play now. It doesn't matter. And that team is awful. And other than Wemby, I think they're hard to watch. I cannot get enough of this dude, not because of what he's going to be, but because of what he already is. He's not a league pass watch in the sense of the Thunder a few years ago, whoever you want to like, or Atlanta several years ago. Like, oh, this is fun. And maybe the guy is on his own individually one of the best players in the NBA. Ways to go and all that stuff. He's one of the best players in the NBA.
And what I've been impressed with is the development, right? Because he started out not shooting the ball particularly well from distance, and he's really improved as a shooter over the course of the season. He's shooting 41% from 3 since February, which is outrageous.
Amazing.
Because if all of a sudden his 3-point shot is locked in, the league's in a lot of trouble. Also, Bill, he's on pace to become just the second rookie ever to lead the league in blocks, which is incredible. By the way, do you know who was the first rookie?
I have no idea. I'm so bad at trivia. You could ask me the name of my second kid, and I would guess Jack, which is not the right answer. I panic.
It's Henry.
When it comes to trivia. Henry. Yeah, no, it's Henry. Henry's the right answer. No, who's the first rookie?
Well, I just mentioned Bol. There's a relation to Bol.
Okay, so it's his dad.
It was Manu.
That's a pretty good one. I want to circle back really quickly to your shooting point because it also, I think, connects with how people were so ready to just unload on this dude. And you know this because you've been covering the game for a long time, but a lot of people who've covered the game for a long time, for whatever reason, forget that Summer League has featured numerous talents who didn't play well in Summer League that has absolutely zero bearing on how they were going to play. Forget their careers, their rookie year. I was at Wemby's first Summer League game, right? That big event in Vegas. Sure. And he did not play well. He did not shoot well. And the glee that was in that arena and the sports writers that I was sitting around, not all, but many of whom, at least to me or to each other, were overreacting. Oh, yeah, welcome to. It's amazing. He didn't shoot well in that game. It is amazing how much people, A, how far he's come from a shooting perspective from that first moment, but B, how much people I think were primed, to your point, to take how slow the Spurs were going to be with him, maybe some limitations in minutes early on, maybe some struggles, and just say, aha, he's not what we said he was. And so under all that pressure, credit to that dude too, because the expectations were massive.
I mean, they've been massive for him, and he has exceeded them. I mean, he keeps improving. I sent you guys on our group text the other day when they played the Rockets, this freak move that he had. I mean, we're talking about his shooting, we're talking about his defense, but the athleticism is also there, and that length that allows him to do things that other people can't do. So there was this video from the Rockets game. He did something I'd never seen before. They double teamed him along the baseline. He was outside the paint, and he pivoted, put one foot inside the paint, and dunked off of the wrong foot from very far away. It shouldn't have been possible, but he did it because his go-go gadget arms allow him to.
Well, that's a great go-go gadget. What a disturbing cartoon that was, by the way.
I used to love that show. We're dating ourselves, but it was a great cartoon.
Retrospect. They redid it too. I think they redid it a few years ago. All right, here's a question I have for you about him. So when you vote for defensive, so I have a vote, right? One of these guys, one of these folks that get to vote. I have these rules. Maybe they're dumb, maybe they're not dumb, but it's a rule for me. On MVP, I put, it's not the whole thing, but I put a lot of credence to where you finish, where your team finishes in the standings. It's significant or a requirement, right? Jason Tatum is not the MVP because the Celtics are the best team in the NBA, but if you are an MVP level guy like Luka, and your team is not near the top, I'm probably going to dock you. And on defensive player of the year, I have always had, and this is hard and fast rule, you got to be on a good defense to be defensive player of the year. And I'm curious your take on this, because I haven't started calling GMs and scouts and coaches, and they take every call when it comes to awards because they're trying to lobby. Do you think I can or should suspend that rule? Defensive player of the year consideration, the defensive player of the year guy on my ballot, there's 3 names, even number 1, for a guy who's on a Spurs team that is bad defensively.
I'm glad you brought this up, because the rookie of the year race, as everybody has concluded, is over. It's been over. Chet, you had an incredible season. You're helping. Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, in any other year, it's Chet Holmgren, and he's doing remarkable things for a team that's challenging for first place in the Western Conference and playing really meaningful minutes. Yeah, that's how good Wemby has been, that he's like now out of the discussion. There was a discussion at the beginning of the year, and then it just ended. Over. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up defensive player of the year, because I think he should be considered. I know that there's this thing about, can you have a defensive player of the year? I think it's still going to be Gobert, and I think it probably should be, because the Wolves play through their defense and they've got the best defense, is the best defensive player. But should he be considered? Absolutely, because he has been transcendent. And I don't mean to be basic about this, but sometimes I am a little bit basic when it comes to these numbers. And I know that they're just counting stats, but look at his stocks, his combined steals and blocks, right? It's almost 5 per game. The guy is averaging almost 5 steals and blocks combined per game. That is, like, it's mind-blowing. For anybody, it would be mind-blowing. It's especially mind-blowing for a rookie, Bill. And yes, the Spurs have been a bad team defensively, 23rd in defensive rating over the course of the year. And I know it's only when you do one guy on off, the numbers can be a little wonky. However, I think it's significant that you go with Wemby on the court. They jumped to 7th in defensive rating. He is a game changer.
I mean, that's amazing. And by the way, it's not that like we're 17 games into the season, right? There's a big enough sample size that something like that is. All right. So here's my other question, because I've had people make the argument to me that maybe I should just not put him 1, right? Put him 2 or 3. But, and he, by the way, to your point, it probably is Gobert right now. I haven't thought about it as deeply as I should. That's sort of where my brain is. But for me, like, the rule applies or the rule doesn't apply. If there's a defensive rule, then you can't vote. If there's your team defense matters, you can't put him 2 or 3. I think I'm there. I think it's reasonable right now to have him on a ballot. And I think it's reasonable if things change or he gets more votes a certain direction than I might give him. If he gets enough 1s and I put him 2, I think it's reasonable that he wins.
Draymond on his podcast the other day said that Wemby right now is a top 15 player in the NBA. And at first I was like, right, that might be a little bit much for me. And then I was like, well, Draymond, for all of his faults, this is one of those things that he would put some thought into. And I think that, like, what he says about something like this carries some weight to it. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, wow, he might actually be right about this, which is really wild that we're already talking about Wemby in that class. Let me help you out here with your defensive player of the year rankings. I'll give you the Vegas odds on it. Gobert's the heavy favorite, -900. Wemby is right behind him. He's number 2 at +1,000. Then you've got Jared Allen, Bam, and Anthony Davis. Bam and Anthony Davis have had excellent defensive seasons. I expect them to be on all defensive teams. But the fact that Wemby is ranked that high, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think it's an error. There's a reason for it.
He's the second. So I can't.
Odds are second in it.
I can't, shouldn't, and would not vote, obviously, on NBA awards since I vote on those. But I will say this to people watching. I don't think it's likely that he's going to be the defensive player of the year. I think it is more likely than 10-1. As I sort of my first reaction. Yeah. I mean, second, but 10-1 is, you said +1,000. I mean, that's.
Yeah. That's why I think it's +1,000. And that's why I think Gobert is such a heavy favorite.
Gobert's
really, right? -900. I mean, you're playing through the Wolves defense and he's the centerpiece of it.
Hey, can I add a point? Yeah, I just want to agree with you. The other thing about that Wolves team is they are not very good offensively. And so it's not, if you put Gobert on whatever, the Celtics, and the same thing was true, awesome. But to your point, playing through their defense and often winning, they're not good offensively. Like, he is arguably their most important player since that's what they do. To your point about playing through defensively, they're not a balanced basketball team, and Gobert is the reason that they're able to win games when they don't score enough points.
Yeah, I mean, it's what Anthony Edwards, who famously hates the All-Star game and All-Star weekend, said. He wanted Rudy Gobert to get an All-Star nod because he said, "Hey, our defense is the best in the league, and he's our best defensive player." So that's what I think. I wanted to run this past you too before we move on from Wemby. I'm sure that you've heard this. There's been like some rumblings among the media and among fans about how much Wemby likes San Antonio, right? There's been these reports that, hey, if they don't, he wants to win. He's all about winning. And if they don't start winning, he's going to want out sooner than later. I think it's a little silly. It's his first season in San Antonio. They're figuring out who he is. He's figuring out who they are. To say that as a rookie, he's already planning his escape from San Antonio feels a little premature to me. However, I will point out that they won 22 games last year, which not a lot. This year, they'd have to finish out 9-8 to beat that mark. They haven't won 3 in a row all season. So, like, how much credence do you give to this whole thing? And how much pressure do you think San Antonio is actually under here?
I think massive pressure a year from now to maybe the year after that. I don't think they're under pressure right now. And by the way, like, lose all the games you want to. Make all the draft. Get as good a draft pick as you can. Draft well. It's not easy to recruit guys to San Antonio. I'm going to make a guess about why they shouldn't worry. That is as superfluous as those people who are speculating he might leave. So it's equally rooted in logic, which you say it's not. I'm just guessing. But from a distance, this is a dude who likes to read, who talks about going to bedtime early, right? He's got his early bedtime when nobody, including Papa's calls him. I mean, he is, by maybe some standards and definitions, especially like wealthy young people, boring. And so there is a world where being in San Antonio is not as significant a problem for his lifestyle as maybe somebody else who's a multimillionaire at his age. You could, whatever, Moby Dick is just as interesting in San Antonio as it is in Vegas. And you sleep the same, maybe better, at 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday in San Antonio as you do in Vegas or New York. So it's not only is it way too early, this is a dude, if anyone's going to say to themselves, sure, San Antonio next 20 years, let's go. Not that he will, but that's the kind of personality that might lean into that.
I mean, I think it's kind of silly because it's not like Pop forgot how to be a good basketball coach, right? Like right now he's doing developmental stuff with Wemby and we've seen the development. I mean, he's taking leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Like it's not taking, years for this kid. It's been taking games for him to make these astronomical achievements. Not to mention that the Spurs have been historically a very good organization that have won multiple championships through various eras.
That's a great point. If Kawhi Leonard doesn't have a falling out with that organization, they are still competitive. And to your point, we've talked about Pop. R.C. Buford is outstanding at what he does and is wildly respected. And like, is it easy to build a winner? No. But in a city like that, it's not. But Sam Presti's doing it. Minnesota looks like they're doing it. San Antonio, I'm not. Now I'm not worried. You just reminded me. They're so well run. It's going to be fine. Not worried.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I lied. I said that was going to be the last Wemby topic, but we can't talk enough about this guy. Producer Aaron brings up a really good point. We've talked about the 65 game threshold for awards,
right?
And how a lot of guys are going to get left off of it. Donovan Mitchell just the other day, he's out. Embiid is out. Tyrese Halliburton. There's just a ton of guys who aren't going to be able to qualify for it. All NBA is 15 guys, right? And it's positionless this year.
Which is interesting too. Yeah, big change.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
And you could you're just picking the 15 best. It's almost kind of like ranking your 15 MVP candidates. Is this too soon to already be talking about him in his rookie season? Because there's a lot of guys who aren't that you would normally have on there. And now all of a sudden you're going to be moving down the list.
It's not too soon. As I think about it, because I'll vote for that too. There's no Embiid, but a lot of times the center position is extraordinarily even the forwards positions can be kind of crowded, right? They all are. No, I mean, I'm trying. You just named 3 guys who are easily top 15. I think Halliburton is easily top 15 guys.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so he'll probably be on there as I think about all the guys that are.
He might. I mean, we'd have to really go through it, but just the fact that we're even considering it, and maybe that's a topic for another show for us to get into the weeds and really find out where we'd have Wemby cut. Because look, what did Draymond just say? Draymond put him at top 15, right? So that would put him on all NBA.